I'm just giving Facebook a second to let me know. Okay, I got the signal that I am live now. Perfect. I'm going to move some things around on my screen. I have got the pre-submitted questions pulled up here. My hair is doing wild things as it's getting hot outside. That's okay. Um, I've got pre-submitted questions pulled up and I am excited to go through those and give you all some more information, some tips, some tricks, some what I've seen worked well, some, think about this, consider this kind of stuff when it comes to marketing and booking your therapy intensives. So thank you so much. If you are here live and joining, feel free to say hi in the comments. Let me know where you're coming in from, what questions you have, especially as I'm going and talking more, answering some of the pre-submitted questions. Let me know if there's clarification, something that didn't quite get answered for you, or if you are also here watching the replay, same thing, comment on the video. I get those notifications and I can respond to those so that you all have your questions answered. So I know there's a ton of new people in the group, so welcome if you are new to the group and if this is one of your first lives that you are catching. Also feel free to check out all the recorded trainings because there's even more I talk about when it comes to marketing intensives because it is one of the most frequently asked questions is how do I best market these? Because you all feel sold on therapy intensives, right? I can find a way to work a little bit differently, work a little bit less, and still bring in the income that I need, if not more income, right? The income that I want to pay down debt faster, take more time off, all that good stuff, as well as you want to help your clients better, right? I know all of you are here because you care about your clients, you want to help them succeed in their goals. Therapy intensives are a fantastic way to do that. So I have been doing therapy intensives in my practice a little bit, like a year and a half at this point. I have done over 50 intensives at this point. They have been super, super helpful for helping me to change up kind of what my work looks like, helping me to add on alternative streams of income like business consulting and coaching for other therapists interested in doing this work and improving their private practice. Lots of ways that I've been able to expand and get more time back in my life because of therapy intensives. So I'm here because I want to help you do the same. So I'm going through some of these pre-submitted questions. And again, basically, I'm just going to answer them and tell you some things I have thought about there. So so me, Amanda, marketing the intensive as the specialty itself or marketing individual niche intensives? I see this question come up a lot around, should I offer like an EMDR intensive? Should I offer a breakup intensive? Should I offer a sexual healing from sexual trauma intensive? Like you can do it in a lot of different ways. Number one, it's always going to be about when you think about like your branding, even if you are a solo therapist in private practice, your website, your social media, if you do that kind of marketing, it's conveying a brand. So do whatever makes sense to you. I've seen some people use even different words, not even call it a therapy intensive, but call it something different, like a marathon session or accelerated therapy or whatever that is. So you can market it however it kind of fits in your branding in that sense. But there's a few different things to consider. So number one, from the you all have heard of SEO, so search engine optimization perspective. If you don't already have that set up, you should definitely go get that set up. Google Search Console and analytics are going to be your friend in seeing how are people finding me. And so I can see that people find my website because they are searching for an EMDR intensive. So right in that sense, I can just market an EMDR intensive. I don't have to say it's an intensive for boosting creative performance. I don't have to say it's an intensive for overcoming a breakup or getting over a divorce. Or I know there are some people who do infidelity disclosure intensives. So there's a lot of ways you can market what the intensive is about, what like healing can occur, what someone can work through, but also you can just say it's a modality specific intensive. Mine are brain spotting and EMDR intensives or couples emotionally focused therapy intensives. So you can go a couple different ways with that. Yes, I had a thing I was going to say, and then it totally just disappeared from my thought. That's okay. Yeah, you can market the modality itself. You can also just market that you do intensive therapy, right? Like that in and of itself is valuable. There are tons of people who would prefer even just 90-minute sessions or 2 2-hour sessions a month as opposed to 4 1-hour sessions. So you can say it's the specialty, the modality. You can say it's the topic of what you're working on in the intensive, or you can just say I offer extended therapy sessions. It can be as simple as that. Are there any methods to do differently in marketing when considering in-person marketing? Um, Depends. So if you're thinking about like, I'm reading this question two different ways, like virtual versus in person. So I can speak to that versus like network related marketing. Virtual and intensives, virtual intensives and in-person intensives. There's really no way you need to market those differently because it's the same modality. A frequent question I get from a client who's interested in an intensive is basically, is there any difference? Like, is one better than the other? And I haven't seen that to be the case. I just say some people have preferences on if they want to do it in person or if they want to do it virtually, but I've seen them work amazingly both ways. So no necessary difference to like market them differently depending on how you're conducting the therapy intensive. If that question is a little bit more about like in-person marketing, like networking or going to resource fairs or different events like that, um, I think the methods that you market are going to be very similar to all the things I talk about with digital online marketing, right? So either way, what you are sharing with people, whether it's something on your website, whether it's a flyer that you're passing out, whether it's a 30-second elevator speech, what you are able to say is that you're offering something different. You're offering something that does allow people the capability to move through therapy goals in a number of hours, in a number of days, right? You're not saying I'm going to cure and fix everything. Sometimes it does happen, but for like healthy expectation management, you're accelerating through their goals, right? You're going to get where you would have in months in just a weekend. So, really, it's just how you're doing that piece of marketing, right? Am I typing it up? Am I putting it on a blog? Am I emailing it out to my email list? Or am I writing it on flyers? Some people have done like buttons at resource fairs about like ask me about therapy intensives with a little QR code. So tons of options that you can do, whether it's digital marketing or online marketing. Is website blog content geared towards intensives or overall specialty topics? Great question. So your blog should cover everything that you do. Blogs from a search engine optimization, again, SEO perspective, are fantastic source for really just getting a lot of meat to your website. Google loves when a website has hundreds of pages, right? And you probably don't have hundreds of services and specialties, but you can have over time hundreds of blog posts. So I myself write blog posts on, are there themes that I'm hearing in my therapy sessions around, not feeling worthy enough or having difficulty maintaining hope when they're losing friendships, or why do I keep getting into these toxic relationships? So like I myself am thinking about like specialty topics, but then every now and then I'm throwing in something that's a little bit more like SEO friendly for my blog posts. So brain spotting intensives in Oregon. What's a therapy intensive and how can I book one? So like you can absolutely, I think that's super helpful. The more us as therapists are hearing about therapy intensives, the more people looking for therapy are hearing about therapy intensives. And if they go to Google with their questions and they happen to find your blog post that answers their questions, so long as they're in your state, right, they're going to reach out to you about, cool, I'm going to work with this person because they wrote a blog on it. It kind of positions them as an expert. So when I think about blogs, I think everything, right? So intensives, specialty topics with the intensives, right? So coming back to this question around how do you market the intensives, I don't think your blog has to be totally different than a service page about therapy intensives. So at the end of the day, you are still answering questions like, what is a therapy intensive, right? So what does it look like to work with you in a therapy intensive? Because we all do it differently. There are some of us that do 90-minute intensives only. There are some of us who do 8 hours of intensives a day. not all of us are going to do the same thing. So for you, what does a therapy intensive look like, right? Answer that on your service page, answer that on a blog, right? You can say, for example, a therapy intensive with me is 3 hours per day for 3 days or whatever that might be. So you want to make sure that you're answering that question. What is this therapy intensive? What can I expect from it? What kind of things are helpful for me to work on during this intensive, right? So you can say different things around these, again, are not just for trauma. I just am a trauma therapist, so I do a lot of trauma work. But I also have a lot of people who have social anxiety, who are in between work, and work is a huge stressor for them, and they want to get over their work anxiety really quickly. Again, couples intensives, whether we've just been in like crisis mode for weeks and months and we can't get out of it, or we did discover an affair, or whatever it is, like write out all those different topics of here are things we can cover in an intensive. Here's something that we can make significant movement on in half a day, 2 days, whatever your program is. So, what is it? Why is it helpful? Why would I want to do it? Why would I choose this over weekly therapy, right? Because some people have those questions around, well, you offer weekly and you offer an intensive. Why would I choose intensive over a weekly, especially at the price point, right? Because a lot of people are looking at weekly therapy as X amount per hour, and they might be looking at your therapy intensives as you are either putting it as like here's my therapy intensive rate per hour, or here's my package price. So a lot of people are going to look at that math and be like, why would I do the intensive instead of the weekly therapy? But so then part of your job marketing intensives feels a little bit more like some sales skills, which, makes a lot of therapists uncomfortable when we don't have that specific skill set. But it's the same thing, right? You're just saying, here is an option. Here's what this can get you. Here is the price point for that service. So, two, what you want to be talking about on that service page for intensives, in a blog post about intensives, if you're writing that, in a reel, in a graphic, like whatever marketing you do, talk to people, I guess, technically, if you're just writing something, about the very real fact that, yes, an intensive might be more money up front, but it's actually going to save them time and money in the long term, right? If I can take half a day off of work and do a 3 to 4 hour therapy intensive and work through a lot of my stuff, that's going to save me the time of having to take multiple hours off of work every week, leaving work a little bit early, especially if I'm driving to an appointment. Am I hiring childcare to go to my appointment? Am I on medications to manage my symptoms that I may not even have anymore after this intensive? I have worked with people on getting their medications down to like a quarter of what they've started with. So, right, you are saving time, you are saving pain, you are saving just like the headache of everything that is like the traditional mental health, what's the word, system. So you can offer people that very real information. There's literally research on that too. I have the research linked on my page for intensives. If you search that up, even just go to Google of like, are therapy intensives, like do therapy intensives save time and money, then you can definitely find that research article. I'm also happy to send it to you. I would just have to dig it up. Yes, work through stuff with extended time. Absolutely. Cool. So ultimately, in terms of that marketing, like what are you doing? So you're talking about what is it? What can I help with? Um, how is it more cost effective? How's it going to actually save me time? And who's this the perfect fit for? Right? Like I've already kind of spoken to a little bit of some of those pieces, but this is the perfect fit for people who don't generally have the time for weekly therapy. The people who keep putting it on the back burner of like, oh yeah, I should get in therapy. I'd love to get back into therapy. I just don't have the time for it. Right. So there's a lot of barriers people have with that. And especially there's a ton of different professions where the weekly format of therapy just doesn't fit. Like doctors, surgeons, lawyers, police officers, attorneys, like there's pilots, so many people where their schedule can be a little bit unpredictable and it's hard to get in a consistent time. So therapy intensive is a perfect way to, all right, let's do a little bit of a deep dive while we know you've definitely got some time, and then we see what you even need to work on after that. So you want to speak to who is this the perfect fit for, right? And sometimes the perfect fit is also just someone who prefers to work this way. There are people who prefer to work this way. think about yourself as a therapist. Would you want to work this way? I think that's a good question, right? Because you're going to have a hard time selling something that maybe you would also feel very averse to, of like, ooh, I would never do this, but I guess if clients want to do this, then maybe like that might make it a little bit harder for clients to sense your buy-in. So that's something to definitely do some reflecting about. And then what is there to do differently in marketing for online intensives and regular weekly sessions? Okay, so I kind of spoke to that a little bit. Um, One thing I found that was super helpful for me in transitioning to getting a lot more intensives compared to consultations for weekly sessions, and this was a huge risk. It made me very anxious to do at first, but I made sure from an income perspective, I was okay. I was making with my weekly sessions and with therapy intensives, I started like comfortably getting to like 12 to 15 to 17K months. So I felt comfortable enough taking this risk, but I put it out on my website. I said, I am no longer taking weekly clients. I'm only working with people in this intensive model, right? And so what that means is that if someone wants to work with me because they landed on my website, they're like, I love her specialties, I love her trainings, I love her personality, her history, her identity, all those different things. If they really want to work with me, they know then the option is this intensive format. And so that may or may not work for you in your decision and kind of where you're at. And again, income needs are a very real thing to be thinking about here. But it's important of, when you're offering multiple services, clients in and of themselves can kind of get stuck up in like, okay, tell me about the intensives. Okay, that sounds good, but maybe we do that at some point. How about we start with weekly? Like there's more decision confusion, right? That analysis paralysis, decision fatigue, all that stuff we hear, like all those phrases exist for a reason. When you have a lot of things to choose from, it's going to be hard to put a lot of thought and energy and intentionality into what thing you end up deciding on. So for me, I took away that confusion by just saying, this is the way to work with me, right? Or like my wait list for weekly therapy is 3, 4, 5 months long, but I can get you in for an intensive in 2 weekends, right? So there's a lot of different ways that you can market how quickly someone can work with you. So my website also has like pop-ups and banners that says, not taking clients. Sometimes if I have a client graduate, I might open up one slot for weekly therapy. So I either say not accepting or accepting on a wait list, or yeah, those two pieces. And then I very explicitly say availability for a brain spotting or EMDR intensive, open July 2024. Couples therapy intensives open August 2024. So I just make that very explicit of look how quickly you can get in. And when people are looking for help, when people are looking for a specific specialty, if you do EMDR or Gottman or brain spotting, whatever you might do, then again, they're going to see, wow, this is someone who clearly knows what they're doing, offering this intensive service, and I can actually get in really quickly. Like that in and of itself is a selling point. So a couple of things to think about in terms of like marketing the intensives versus regular weekly sessions, but especially hitting those things of like, this is how it's going to be really helpful for you. This is who it's the perfect fit for. This is how much work you can do in this little time, and how much, again, money is going to save you, time is going to save you, all that good stuff. There were a few questions that came up on pricing, so I'll definitely talk about that. I just want to make sure I get through any other marketing and booking related questions. So someone said, I would love any advice on what to say during the consultation phone call. Really good question. So it's helpful to think about, what does your consultation process currently look like? So do you schedule them via phone, email, or online scheduler? Those are most of the options at this point. You might have a couple of others that you work with. But again, on my EHR, so I use Jane. I know each platform is a little bit differently. I was using Therapy Notes. I know a lot of people use Simple Practice. I couldn't find options in either of Therapy Practice, or from what I've heard people say in Simple Practice, to make separate consultation appointments, like a consultation for weekly therapy versus a consultation for intensive therapy. Jane does have that capability. So what I did is I had both up, right? Either a consultation for a brain spotting or EMDR intensive, a consultation for an EFT couples intensive, or a consultation for weekly or biweekly therapy. So what made that really easy for me was that I knew what someone wanted to talk about going into it. So it felt less random for someone to be like, I'm here for weekly therapy, and me to say, no, we're not going to talk about that. We're actually going to talk about this whole different thing that you didn't prepare for at all. So that was my way of like being transparent and being on the same page as people, right? So when I'm not taking people for weekly therapy, I take that consultation for weekly therapy off of my Jane Online calendar, because I don't want people to book something thinking that they're getting on a wait list or they're getting in when that's what I don't have availability for. So look into your EHR or what you use for that. If you don't have an online scheduler, I highly, highly recommend it. I know a lot of people feel nervous about that because who the heck is going to book? And what if they're a terrible fit? And what if it's at a time when I don't even want to be doing consultations? Again, depending on the EHR you use, there's tons of different ways that you can customize that to say, like, these are my hours for just therapy versus maybe there's like 2 hours a week or 2 half-hour slots somewhere across your week where you're open for consultations. So Jane has that capability. So that's what I do with my calendar is I save, these are just the times for my consultations. So when it gets to the consultation, however you get to it, if they've self-scheduled it, if you've played phone tag, email tag, because again, sometimes that's how clients contact us anyway. When you get to the consultation, it can be helpful to just start off by asking and confirming that. So confirming that we're here to talk about an EMDR or brain spotting intensive. Is that correct? Is that your understanding? If clients booked under that appointment, they'll say like, yep, I got a chance to read over that page. If someone did book for like a weekly call, but even on your website, you're saying I'm only working with people in intensives, then you would you'd have to have that conversation again a little bit earlier on, because what you don't want to do, I know a lot of us hate when we've like talked with someone for 15-20 minutes, it feels like a really good fit, and then they wanted to use your insurance but your private pay, or they thought you took this insurance but you take that insurance, or whatever it is. So I always think that earlier in those conversations you have that conversation about intensives versus weekly therapy, the better. So to say, as you saw on my website, I'm currently only taking people for therapy intensives. Can you tell me a little bit about why you thought a therapy intensive would be a good fit for you? So it's a nice way to just like set the frame of, here's what we're talking about in this consultation. We are talking about therapy intensives. We're not talking about weekly therapy. So I like to just set the frame in that way. Again, setting up in my Jane calendar, here's a consultation for intensive, helps me know that we're going to be on the same page. So we're talking about this. What questions do you have? I like to ask questions about, why do you think an intensive would be a better fit for you compared to weekly therapy? Because clients do also have that sense, right? Especially if your web page, your service page on intensives is doing a good job with pitching, right? This is the perfect fit for you. Here's everything that we can work through. Your web page should be able to sell itself on therapy intensives, right? So I have a lot of people who get to the point of the consultation with me and say, yeah, everything made sense. Basically, I'm ready to book. I just wanted to see what your schedule, your availability looked like. Or I had a quick question about, is there a benefit to in-persons versus virtual? So my consultations are usually brief and it's logistics because they've already read about the intensive. They know what to expect. We talk about the pricing on the consultation too. So if you can answer all those questions on your webpage, that's going to make your consultations feel a lot easier too. So why do they think an intensive is a good fit for them? What resonated with them? What questions do they have? Especially if they are looking to use out-of-network benefits, that'll have to be a conversation you'll have to get used to talking about in terms of how the reimbursement is going to look a little bit different, how it's primarily an out-of-pocket service. There's some ways you can charge it in an in-network kind of way. It requires a little bit more creativity and doesn't look like the traditional therapy intensive, which I'll just kind of leave it at that because that's a whole other conversation for another training, perhaps, if you all are interested in hearing more about that. But during the consultation, yeah, asking questions about why an intensive, what's going on that you want to bring up in an intensive, what are your expectations and your hopes for an intensive, right? Again, if someone's like, I've had people on a consultation say, I'm just kind of looking for like a quick fix, a magic bullet, a magic fix, all that good stuff. And I love that they have high hopes and intentions, and I never want people to feel disappointed or let down. There's a difference between we can do a lot of work, we can work on resolving multiple smaller or maybe even like one big thing, and this intensive is definitely gonna wipe you of all of your trauma and anxiety. Like that would be, even if you don't say guarantee, I guarantee we'll do this, that would just be setting up the intensive with a really high bar. And as we know, right, ultimately this is accelerated therapy. You can accomplish months of therapy in this weekend, but how many times does it take months of therapy to realize, oh, this thing has been blocking me from processing this thing? Or actually, it's not even about this thing that I thought it was about, it's about that thing over here. So that's going to happen in an intensive as well, right? Blocking stuff comes up, people gain a little bit more clarity, and that's just as important to the process, right? That's a part of therapy. But so what we want to say is that, right? Of like, there's a lot of things that can happen. Sometimes this happens, sometimes that happens. There's no guarantee that, it's going to be a resolution of all symptoms. Like, is that okay with you? Is this something that you're still interested in? So basically, I call that under the umbrella of like informed consent, right? This is what the service is. Logistically, here's what it can offer you. There is no guarantee around, it's that quick fix, magic bullet kind of situation. So those are things to be thinking about during the consultation. Obviously, the next biggest questions are around availability, booking, pricing. What's important in all of those things is for you to establish some policies for yourself, because you are going to build up a lot of resentment and frustration if you are cutting off 2 whole days of your calendar for someone who says, I want to do an intensive, and then at the last minute they say, never mind. And then you lost 2 days worth of income. You're frustrated with that. Now you might be freaking out because you're really dependent on those 2 days of income just from the intensive, right? If you didn't schedule your weekly people, if you're still seeing weekly people, that's even more money that you lost out on. So we don't want that. So I want you to think about any policies that are helpful for you to have in place around when do you need, from the consultation to when they book the intensive, when do you need paperwork completed? Do you have any kind of deposit of, in order to hold your space on my calendar, there's the fee of XYZ. What do you do with that deposit if they do get sick, right? Is it non-refundable, transferable? Is it refundable but not transferable? So you got to think about all these different policies that you want to put in place. But I do encourage you to have policies you put in place so that your time on your schedule is very much protected. Okay, I'm making sure to see if there's any other. Those were the majority of the marketing questions. So a lot of the questions also were about like fee structure, someone asking about a husband-wife team facilitating couples intensives, which I love. I know there's a lot of people who do 2 therapists or like a therapist and a coach with intensives for couples. Absolutely, there's a viable market for that. That ties into the pricing a little bit, so I'll give you some considerations to think of there. Ultimately, when you think about the pricing per hour or the pricing for your whole package, right? Half day, 2 days, 3 days, whatever that is. I want you to think about whether it's you as an individual, whether you are splitting the fee, if that's what you're doing, as opposed to double charging for both of your time. I mean, that's a decision in and of itself. But I want you all to think about, even if this is just you, you're doing yourself, what do you want to make from these intensives? Because what I encourage people, what I do, what I have found successful, is not to charge just your hourly rate, because that's all just going to make you work more, right? Like if you are in this group, if you've watched the majority of my lives, including this one, I'm always saying the goal here is to work smarter, not harder. And it's to work less or work differently so that you are not burning out. And you are going to burn out if you're seeing 20, 25 clients weekly for an hour and then doing 9 hours intensives on top of that, especially if that intensive is still at the same rate, because that just means it's 9 hours of additional therapy you're doing that week, and that's a lot of work. So to balance this, right, the therapy intensive, it is intensive for all parties involved, for you as a therapist, a co-therapist if you have one, and the client. It's a lot of work, it's a lot of energy that we're putting into this. And so you should be compensated accordingly. So what I recommend, I've shifted my fees quite a bit in the past even 6 months. So now I do something a little bit differently. But for the first full year offering intensives, what I had done was I took my hourly rate. And if you have a 45 or 50-minute rate, then I want you to calculate your hourly rate. So that's whatever your rate is divided by 45 or 50 times 60. So calculate your hourly rate, or your hourly rate if you have it, and then charge at least 20% on top of that for your intensive rate. 20% is a little bit ambiguous. If you do like 10%, 15%, that's fine. I just want you to think about, ultimately it's giving yourself a little bit more profit. It's giving yourself a little bit more of like, this was really hard work. It's almost like a tip, but don't think about it that way. But it is just a way of recognizing I worked harder today, right? Like I worked harder, I put out more work. The client also got a lot of really good service from me, right? Like those of us who offer intensives, you will know, wow, I just did something really cool there. And that actually feels really empowering. Like the confidence I have gained from offering intensives has felt so cool. I don't always feel confident in the weekly model because we're limited on time. We didn't even get a chance to do this. They said they wanted to come in for brain spotting. We didn't do this at all today. I don't feel as good as I do in the weekly model as I do in the intensive model. So you're getting a lot of confidence for that, and to get a little bit of money on top of that is nice, a little bit more money. When it comes to if you are going above and beyond your traditional hours of work, so my hours, I used to stick to kind of just like Monday through Thursday for my weekly people. Fridays would be, as most of us are, maybe you do a Monday, admin, supervision, consultation, kind of stuff. So if you are working on a Friday, if you're doing this intensive on a Friday, and you don't normally work Fridays, or even on a weekend, and there's not many therapists that work weekends, if you offer an intensives on those days, what I recommend is 50% above your hourly rate. And I know that that feels huge, and I know that that feels scary, and it might make some people feel like, oh no, I'm not allowed to charge that much. But I want to remind you of a very real life example of how many other healthcare professionals or shift workers or many other type of people who work, even white collar jobs, where if they work on a holiday, right, they get time and a half. And so the 50% is very intentional of time and a half, right? I'm going above and beyond. I am working a lot harder. I'm doing hours I may not typically do. So 50% above your hourly fee. Again, that might freak you out. That might make you have some reactions to that. It is not that scary. There are a lot of people who have seen the kind of worth in that cost, right? Well, I can't find anyone else who can see me on a weekend, or, well, that would save me from having to take more time off. So that sounds good. I'd rather do that. For me, again, I only offer in-person sessions when they're intensive sessions. So I explain a part of that is also like the cost of office rent that I'm building into the cost. So my difference where it used to come out to was, or what it still comes out to these days, is $400 per hour if it's during the weekday, and Friday through Sunday, $500 per hour. And so I tell people that too, right? Of like, if you did want to book on a Monday, here would be the cost. If you wanted to book on a Saturday, here would be that cost. And some people will make the difference of, I'd rather save the money, let's book on Monday. And that's fine, right? Because that's their choice, that's their decision. But I will tell you, it feels really good to be compensated really well and do amazing clinical work, because everyone I've done an intensive with has made progress in some way. Some of it's like amazing, complete 180. Some people even just like 25%, 50% for any amount of change to happen. It feels really, really good. So those are kind of the fee structures that I think about. So if you are doing something where it's more of a team, I've heard people do it different ways, whether that's, basically then it's double our hourly rates because we're both here, we're both on, or is that generally, especially if your team is like within the same business, because, sometimes you are two separate LLCs coming together to do this. So if you're in the same business, you might be able to think about it from the perspective of, what do we as a business want to take home as opposed to us as individuals? So you could do double the fee for each of the clinician. You could do a portion of the fee. I think I've seen most people split it unless there's more work that one person is doing in terms of like, I emailed the client, I sent them the resources and stuff like that. So it doesn't just have to be the clinical work that's happening in that moment. So those were the pre-submitted questions. For those of you that are here live, if you have any other questions, I've still got some time to answer anything that's come up as I've talked through the marketing component, the booking component. So, right, making sure you've got all of your logistical ducks in a row there. I do recommend from the booking perspective, right? Okay, I've booked an intensive, great. Now what do I do? You might need to have some different forms or at least addendums to forms. Like if you are in the informed consent, if you have a statement like I do for your traditional therapy of, typical research shows most people benefit from like 12 to 16 sessions of therapy. That doesn't really apply to a therapy intensive. So I took that part out. I was more clear around like, here's what the phase of treatment is going to look like as opposed to in weekly therapy. The first like 2 to 3 weeks is about like assessment and treatment planning. And then it might take a while for us to do the actual like intervention work. With a therapy intensive, I can very explicitly say, hour 1 is this, hours 3 through, I guess 2 through 5 are about this, hour 7 is whatever. So from my informed consent perspective, I make that a little bit different. I have that document about my policies for when paperwork needs to be submitted, when and what my deposit policy is, so that my time is protected, so that I know they're committing to something, especially if people are booking out a month and a half or 2 months in advance. So those are things you'll have to think about too, making sure just all those logistical ducks are good to go there. But otherwise, any other marketing questions, any booking questions, any questions about how do I have these conversations with new clients versus current clients? Because that's important too. Those might look a little bit different. My camera just went blurry. I don't know why. That's fine. It'll probably unblur in a second. Sometimes if I swipe it does, but apparently it didn't today. Okay, well, again, if you have caught the live here, I really want to see, normally in Zoom, there's a way like you turn your video off and on. I don't see that in the Facebook Live option. If you are catching the recording and you have more questions, again, just let me know, respond on this video in the comments. You can also feel free to DM me if you have any questions. But otherwise, thank you so much for those of you who were able to make it live. Thank you for those who are catching the recording. I apologize for whatever happened to my camera that it just completely blurred out, but maybe that's a good sense to wrap it up. Anyway, oh, now it just cleared up. Great. That didn't work for my logic then. So yeah, thank you so much for everyone for being here. Let me know if there are other topics around intensives, if there are other things that you are thinking about and needing support with. I'm happy to help you however I can. So thanks so much for watching today. Hope you have a good rest of your day. I hope that you all have some good restful plans for the 4th. Hopefully you have a little bit of a shorter week of work. I myself have an intensive booked on Saturday, so that's what I will be doing. So, all right, everyone, take care. Thanks for joining today. I'll see you next time. Bye.